walking this path with me for many years now, and some are completely new faces. So lovely to see everyone. So, really, for me, this path has always been about practice, but also the intellectual understanding. And more so than intellectual understanding, I truly think it's of great importance to be one's own teacher. Doesn't mean you have to be anyone else's teacher, but for sure, to get enlightened, you need to understand the path well enough so that any question that comes up before you go to a teacher, you have your own idea of what the answer might be, so that you have your own idea of where to go. And then the teacher becomes more another information source or a place to have reflections coming from for your own answers, but is never a replacement for the teacher in your own mind. And of course, that doesn't mean you have to become a neuroscience expert or know science in any way. And a lot of the reason why I wrote this book is to present many different lenses into this process, all sort of showing the same progression, the same evolution, to make it as available as possible to people of different backgrounds, different languages, but generally all speaking Westernese and having the type of standardized Western education. And having said that, it also lends directly to the topic of today, what is with essentially an understanding at the foundation of this path, which is why this first chapter is also called What's Awareness? We sort of take awareness for granted. It's just a thing that's there all the time. In some way, it's the only thing that we know that we um, that we know for sure. There is awareness. There is an experience. There is phenomena. There's content that's continually arising in experience. That's the only thing that's undeniable. Everything else that we know by inference. Either it comes up in awareness, and then the next thing we know in relation to this, or someone told us. Someone used language or packed symbols or the constructs of awareness. It translated into our ideas, which themselves are inferences from what has come before in awareness. And we sort of make it work on the way, also forgetting that we've ever done this. Meaning, we take this incredible fact of existence, which is we don't know anything except on this foundation of there is awareness and stuff comes up in it. Who the fuck knows where from? who made it happen this way? How it came to be? And then we kind of put it aside because it's not a crucial understanding for our day-to-day life, right? With all of that's happening around us, all of the many different things we have to juggle just to exist in life, the many different understandings and relationships and concepts that we tie together just to make decisions moment to moment, this basic fact just goes away. The issue with it going away is that we start becoming detached from the fundamentals of how it is that we know. And we start getting lost in deeper and deeper and more reified maps of maps. And the danger there is that we start spinning inside constructed worlds that are so distinct and different than those of other people, but that also take us away from our bodies, from our senses. Those that feed the content of awareness before it becomes constructed, before we start making inferences, before we start rationalizing, before we construct those worlds upon worlds upon worlds, based on those symbols, based on those chunkings of what our senses are telling us. And not only that, we also then start interpreting every new experience, every stream of sensory information coming in from the perspective of the map within map within map within map within map. And there's a way that this creates suffering that, of course, we'll explore in pretty much every chapter of the book going forward. But for now, just in the context of this chapter, I will say, if we have an idea that there is suffering, right? The first noble truth of Buddhism, and I'm going to try not to go too deep into the Buddhism right now. This is certainly one that everyone knows. There is suffering. We can use this knowledge to then go towards the cessation of suffering, right? It's just the foundation of the old formulation. First turning of the Dharma is there is suffering, and then what is it that leads to it? But there's also a danger here, because if we have an idea, this chunked collection of sensory experience arising in awareness that creates that, and we have an idea that there is suffering, we can start relating to arising phenomena as suffering. And if we do that a lot, we can start relating to suffering things that before we would not necessarily even consider to be suffering, and then create ideas about suffering that then bootstrap new ideas about suffering, and then suddenly we're in a loop of suffering that's enhanced by our understanding of suffering, or that there is suffering. Ultimately, as we go down this path, it's not about letting go of the maps, it's not about letting go of the ideas, it's being able to see them in the context of knowing that all we know is awareness, that everything that comes to mind, every idea, every symbol, every understanding is lacking in any inherent meaning. And so this lacking of this direct understanding of a lack of inherent meaning, what is sometimes would be called emptiness, right? Shunyata in Pali, which is really empty, or asvabhava, which is a lacking of own nature, lacking of a nature that does not depend on anything else, dissolves our capacity to stay really stuck in those loops. So, in a continuous contact with a more fundamental recognition of awareness as it is, or just the senses before they become constructed, still allows us to create those sophisticated maps inside maps, but we're not married to them. We're not slaved to interpreting reality through this self-made mental prison. So that's a lot of the topic of this of the first chapter. And then in the second one that we'll talk about today, the where are you from? I talk about the core, or an essence of this path that I describe, which is not so much about attainments, not so much about understandings of how the path unfolds, or the nature of mind in a conceptual manner. And there's not so much emphasis on the types of progression that the earlier turnings of the wheel talk about. It's more about how sophisticated is the configuration of mind that creates interpretations of reality based on what comes up in every moment. Where generally the progression is to be less and less mediated by existing ideas of what experience is, and more go towards our capacity to continually being in contact. So let's see if there's anything else I want to say before just jumping into the discussion. Oh, and I will say that this notion of a basis of operation, or a vantage point, is one that's not very well known, but it is rooted in Tibetan Buddhism. There's a note in that chapter with the spelling. I will not even try to pronounce the word. It's a little too um, too obscure for me how to pronounce that. But it is something that exists in those teachings. It's just that I do believe that with the mental tools that we have today, with the type of abstract and rational thinking that all of us have been taught, we can entertain those ideas again in a way where every new experience gets filtered through this knowing, such that the mind goes towards less constructing, less mediation, more direct contact with this basic recognition of awareness, or what I often call fundamental consciousness, the ongoing immediate stream of sensory bits before they become whole new mental world. All right. that's the basic spiel for these chapters. And now we can just jump straight into discussion. So really feel free to bring any comment, what this evokes in you, any type of intellectual understanding that's arisen from reading this, or any question that you have for all of us or for me. And I hope you all read the document. I really encourage you to maintain this attitude of a group that's come together to learn. Let's see how we can all contribute to each other's process in our comments, in our participation in this group. Yeah.
What you said about that we come to label it as suffering, I believe there's this thing called suffering. I think then I was like, is the only, do we just suffer because of the label of suffering? That's like so, um, so, so direct and like, I guess I'm kind of curious, like, if I'm like oversimplifying it, and then there's also the feeling of like, then why have I been running around like for my whole life, if that is the case?
Yeah. So I want to ungaslight all of us by saying suffering is not just created by an idea of there is suffering. Otherwise, we would not want to proliferate this idea so much as we have, right, for the past 2,500 years. There are processes leading to suffering that do not depend on any understanding of the nature of being. Right? The knowing that there is suffering is part of the cure. I'm just saying that even that type of understanding eventually we put down, or at least we see the essence of in fundamental consciousness versus this construct being some ultimate truth. Generally speaking, suffering is a result of holding on to any mental idea as ultimate truth. And the only reason why we would make this mistake of reifying something and making it into a truth is because we're not also in contact with fundamental consciousness. When we are in contact this way, every arising construct, right? I'm sort of like, if there's layers of mentality, and this is the ground floor, the continuously arising, freshly reiterating ground of being, here there's like a low level concept, and here's a whole world that we've constructed. We instead come to this way of being which treats every arising concept as an offering to the space that's being offered and then immediately dissolves. So even there is suffering, right? If I'm looking at some part of my body that's tense, oh, that's the suffering that I've heard about. If it then dissolves, the next thing might be a skillful way to handle the specific thing that's happening here. If I'm stuck on there is suffering and this is suffering, now I'm continually looking at this from the perspective of there is suffering. And it's going to constrain my capacity to create a skillful response to whatever it is that's happening here. Here I'll say is the very famous sutta and the teaching of the first versus second arrow. So if I take an arrow here and it starts hurting, and I'm not attached to a story of it being suffering or any other thing, I could just like take it out, wrap it up, go to the hospital, do what I need. If I first take the arrow and then there is suffering, and why do I deserve this suffering? And who fired this arrow at me? Right? In the meantime, there's an arrow inside of me and it's actually hurting. So the more that we let go of ideas like this, which is predicated on our capacity to allow everything coming up to be a gift or an offering to the space, the more we can skillfully then relate to what actually hurts.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think the relating back to the arrows is helpful. Um, yeah, I think the pain, yeah, I think I was separating them out, but I think the what you said about, oh, we labeled as suffering. was like a different way of being like, oh, the second arrow is self-created.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it kind of clicked something in of like, because I have been trying to be like, wait, where is the suffering? Like, other than a label I'm putting on it, I don't really, it's not inherently there, but can it just not be there? Can that be? So I think what you said, I was like, oh, okay, that actually kind of matches. But I was like, trying to kind of figure out if that was actually the case. But yeah, that's helpful. So.
Good.
I have a question. I think you you talked about the four kind of like phenomena. Sorry?
Four bases of operation?
No. More kind of like the unconscious awareness, conscious
Yes.
awareness, unmediated awareness, and fundamental consciousness. And it's really laid out pretty clearly. And I wonder, in regards to our goals, and you shared that our goal is to try to, in some ways, purify our mind to get into this kind of a deepest level. So I'm pretty understanding about the unconscious awareness and conscious awareness. Obviously, that's what we try to do in meditation, realizing our thoughts, feeling, emotions, and obviously, hopefully, can detach from there, being the observer. But going back to is our goal is to try to get closer, and I see closer is the best possible way for me to realize that we're getting to that, maybe kind of like removing our filters. But is it possible for us to fully remove these filters?
So it's filters all the way down. Nothing is not a filter, and in some way, perception.
Yet it's kind of like a chicken and egg in some ways, because ultimately we're talking about our subjective experience. Yeah. And how can we go out of this filter, which part of our own existence?
Yeah, Dor was saying it's filters all the way down, and I know this is even from a neuroscientific point of view. Already, when the light hits your eye, immediately the receptors there already start filtering. Like the very first like mechanism that receives those photons will already create some kind of statistical aggregate of what's happening. So yeah, we don't stand a chance to get unfiltered reality.
And I think, speaking in terms of the books, like in the What's Awareness chapter, talks about the self-iterating model and how awareness is things being known in terms of other things. So there's this example: the sky's yellow today, meaning it's less blue than the model norm. And so it's like, I think you have one experience, and that experience conditions something, and then that conditioned thing again has an experience. So in terms of that, it feels like if there's no conditioning at all, if it's totally unconditioned, there's also no content that can be perceived. What do you think about that?
But then that means it's got to start somewhere, right? So we're born already with some kind of conditioning then?
It started somewhere, but even the process of you being born, you can perceive of that having started a long time ago. And it all arises together, right?
Does it really have to have a starting point?
Well, if we interpret everything in terms of what we're used to, what our history is, or as a comparison to how we are conditioned, then yeah, I suppose it has to start somewhere.
I mean, in my I do like the example of the camera looking at the screen and like having those replicates. And I do think if there is a starting point, that wouldn't matter because it is inaccessible and it will never be accessible. By the way, Dora is still trying his best to do some hot spotting.
He just came back.
What did I miss?
Well, we were talking about this idea is if everything is interpreted. I hope I'm saying it right. If everything's interpreted in terms of our conditioning of what came before it, so to speak, then there has to be a starting point. It seems to me anyway.
Mhm.
And so, you know, what would that be? Are we born already with conditioning?
There's two facets to the answer that I have about this. One is, first of all, just the shape of our senses, and then every type of instinct, every urge, everything that biology and evolution have made us be is a sort of conditioning or sort of programming, right? There are particular shapes, particular sensations that we prefer, and then we go towards them, and then we start making meaning about why we go towards them, right? Generally speaking, humans are the only animal that makes meaning. We conceive about the world. We make maps and ideas and meanings, and then make ourselves miserable getting lost inside of them. We have this beautiful feature. It's just about learning how to use it in a way that contributes. That's a net contribution to our life. That's not something that causes misery. And then the second thing, in terms of conditioning, even in the stomach, there are studies showing that the environment in which your mother carried you determines your hormonal makeup, determines your attitude, determines the qualities of your nervous system. So if a mother is particularly anxious while she's carrying you, that's going to have an effect on how you are as a baby. And of course, immediately after birth, just the way that your parents are treating you, the way that the hospital staff is treating you, those are imprints from the very first moment of your own awareness coming online that it's then going to interpret any new experience. So we go into this notion of intergenerational conditioning or intergenerational trauma, which is of course a huge field of research. All of this to say is that up until a few decades ago, in the field of psychology, there was this sense of a human being born as a blank slate. But from the moment that we're born, there's already so much baggage that we're carrying. There's already such a slant to how we interpret the world. And again, I want to say it's not about coming back into a state of a blank slate as much as it is having a reference point, which is as much a blank slate as possible, at least in terms of having each and every moment be a sort of a new reference point versus a reference point that I've inherited from my family, from my culture, from my religion, that I'm still using, even though it was essentially created 2,000 years ago. And maybe we can take a moment to have this intention for an inquiry later. But speaking about this feels like a pregnant moment. If you take like 30 seconds, we don't have to share this later. Just think to yourself, what sort of ideas am I measuring all of my experience against that have existed 2,000, 3,000, 6,000 years ago?
I think the legal system was invented in the Roman times. For
I want you to think even more. I want you to think even more personally. For like really the fundamental aspects of life. Like for example, I see a woman. What sort of ideas do I have in my mind about how women are? Where do they come from? Who told me those ideas? how have I slanted my interpretation of experiences because of those ideas placing me as a child? And I want to say just because of what I'm sensing in the field, there's a way that even asking ourselves those questions brings up what I think I'm detecting as a sense of shame, like we're doing it wrong, that we're doing it. And even that is an idea that's been implanted in us. Like we're supposed to be pre-made with all of the wisdom of the universe. We're not supposed to make mistakes. We're not supposed to see things through filters. Right? In another culture, in another community of people, inculcated with different ideas, maybe such an exploration would immediately bring excitement. Oh, I'm seeing something new about the way that I've been seeing things. But there's something about the Judeo-Christian mix that's at the foundation of our psyche tends to lead us towards, oh no, we fucked up again. Oh, I'm glad I came into this Zoom room to see how I fucked up again. And it's like a self-flagellation. And anyway, you get a sense, like a very direct taste of how an idea coming from a conversation, we're just sitting comfortably in a rooms on Zoom, leads to a sense of so this is an intellectual exploration or a bit of an inquiry, and of course the path or the essential path of Buddhism of meditating, of going towards awakening is, as we said, is boring deeper inside the mind to a place where you don't even have to conceive of how we conceive. But inquiry still has a place in this, but I'll leave it aside for now. So let's continue with the discussion. Any other comments or questions or ideas?
Yeah, I was about to say, I noticed that I'm still tracking Moshe and his question from before.
Thank you. So what was it? Oh, about the four bases operation. I'm sorry, I got lost in the technical issues. The question was going deeper towards them. Sorry, please remind me the question.
It's about are we able to get to a point that we see things without filters? I mean, I I can see that we can basically reduce being aware of the filters, being detached from them to some degree, and try to, and having no filter. If I don't know exactly your philosophy or what you're directing. I mean, I'm trying to be more aware of it. Ultimately, I mean, I'm using all this concept for me, to live life, to use whatever happening. And again, I mean, related to the questions that you talked about before, what are the concepts or the ideas that we have? It's kind of a filter. So I'm trying to say to myself, oh, you know what? And you shared about, okay, there is some kind of a shame here or whatever it is that we're doing it correct or not. So I said, okay, you know what? Let me have an idea in my mind to make it fun. So I said, no matter what happened here, it's a fun, great, loving experience. So I'm bringing a new idea just to be in the present moment. Yes. Now, so I like this idea. Yeah, I'm trying to be grounded in the present, enjoy. Yes. And it's kind of like an evolution. It's a process with gratitude, appreciation. So is it another idea? And we can go on and on and on and on. Yes, endlessly. But going back to the question is it possible to remove these filters?
So that's a great question, and it's really at the foundation of this whole path. I have a giant multifaceted multifaceted answer that I'm trying to compress into just the essentials. Let's see. It has 3 parts: ground, path, and fruition. It's telling me my connection is unstable. Can you all hear me okay? Okay.
Still works.
Ground, path, fruition. There's a way that I've started portioning out the path into 3 matching vectors of development, aside from those classically meant by ground, path, and fruition. One is the path of emptiness. Another is the path of fullness. And the third one is a path of alignment. In the path of emptiness, we try and go towards what ends up being fundamental consciousness, what I'm calling fundamental consciousness, where we are more and more aware of the filters arising, so that even as they arise, and even if they are still in operation, we at least have this awareness, and it gives us more degrees of freedom about whether we want to opt into the filter or not. It gives us this fact of, this is what I'm doing right now. And I might still be somewhat helpless about this, but at least I know, right? If I see a person and I have an idea that they're the enemy or that I'm upset with them because I'm storing in my head, at least I can say, look, I have this story. I wish I didn't. I wish I could love you, but this is what I'm seeing. This is my story. It's the path of emptiness. The path of fullness is in creating more evolved filters, more sophisticated and complex perspectives that I can apply for every experience, that I can have come up as a response to everything that reality throws my way. And that and especially couples see the nature and then choose that. And so we
lost you. Dor, we lost you.
Oh, where did you lose me?
I think the
How long ago?
fullness as like a more, I forget the word you use, but like more wholesome filters, and then after that was a little.
So the fullness is a path of development. It gives us more options. If emptiness allows us for a wide recognition of fundamental consciousness, then fullness allows us more options to construct from fundamental consciousness in every moment. So I can choose whatever filter I have from the ones that I have that is most fitting for the moment. So I have, for example, a way to relate to people based on the type of culture or type of level of mind that I see them coming from. Right? So path of emptiness is showing us the filter. Path of fullness shows us more possibilities for filters. And then the path of alignment, and I'm just going to put this here in a bookmark because it's a whole rabbit hole, is about having filters, having perception and behavior come up in alignment with a greater wholeness than the one that exists just inside each individual person. It's the type of deep alignment that beyond emptiness and fullness makes for a life that becomes more and more like a dance or in flow with everything that is. I'm going to put that down for now, even though in some sense that is the highest peak or the crux of this path, arriving at this place. Maybe you can see how both emptiness and fullness helps you towards that, but putting that aside for now. So does that answer the question? Any other thoughts on this?
You know what? It's challenging, to be honest, for me. But even that, you talked about emptiness and fullness, and maybe it's a spectrum, and then you try to create some kind of a synergy, yes, between these two to which you call alignment. But then now you go into alignment and it said, okay, based on what? Based on which ideas you synergize. So now you create a new model, yes, a new filter, a new framework. You know, it's kind of like almost infinite, almost. And maybe you try to create a dance that is bringing, you know, these things closer and closer. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So at the risk of freaking everyone out, I'm sure some of you are familiar with those ideas. Right now, to put it very plainly, each individual mind is sort of like a subroutine in a greater program that's trying to out-calculate the entire program. Each brain wants to hold the entire universe. And so we need models, and we want better models, and we want the answers that I can rely on and place more models on. And that in itself creates a ton of tension. Our minds were not built to hold so much. And through this path of alignment, there is a way to start offloading a lot of the process into the bigger mind, so to speak. And I'm not necessarily speaking about anything spiritual, mystical, whatever, but just a bigger mind that forms from the collective consciousness of even just plain old humans. We learn to trust that whatever arises from this, certainly because we come into this beautiful flow, is better than any model that we can hold onto as the foundation of existence. So it's a little scary even just to think about, but there's a way that we give ourselves to this greater wholeness. But the thing is, it's not really ourselves that we're giving. It's just an idea of what we are that we loosen a little bit so that we can come into a much more profoundly engaging and joyous dance with everything that is. Nothing is really lost. And then we're free to only model what we really care about versus needing to hold, oh, this is how the world works? Is this ideology? Is this religion? Is just dance.
Sounds good.
There is another thing that you mentioned, which is, do I then replace my ideas? I want to comment on this. So even though we're going towards fewer and fewer ideas about everything, at least ones that we're holding on very tightly, there is value in taking on skillful ideas, what sometimes in Buddhism is called liberating ideas. And it's exactly as you say. It can be, oh, how do I bring gratitude for what's happening in every moment? How do I bring joy, not just to myself, but to all participants in my social sphere, in my environment? And so we're still in the realm of ideas, we're still here, but we're taking an idea that might create more discord, more suffering, and replacing it with something that's just, it's nicer. It's nicer if we're all kind to one another. That's the beginning. That's just a foundation that we form before we can start digging deeper and deeper and deeper. Now we're here. And the funny thing about this is that gratitude arises naturally from here. We don't have to make an effort towards it. The more we're based here, the more the natural way that we relate to the world is with joy and kindness and gratitude. And partly the reason we call it Buddha nature
Don't worry, we are losing you again.
Okay, I'm back. I'm back for real with the real internet.
I think last thing we heard was Buddha nature.
Mm. So sometimes we can call fundamental consciousness Buddha nature, right? Many different names. In the Walking Each Other Home, I list a few of my favorite ones. Sometimes I like Buddha nature in particular because those qualities that at the beginning we sort of fabricate, oh, I have to be kind to everyone, arise naturally from Buddha nature. So the more we align with Buddha nature, the more we give ourselves to it, right? By ourselves, again, I mean our ideas of how we are. Kindness, compassion, gratitude arises naturally from Buddha nature, from fundamental consciousness. We don't have to worry about it.
I'm wondering about it. Sounds like it kind of in alignment with what you just described, or in my own experience, I can understand how the path of emptiness a little further on opens into a kind of into the path of fullness. And I'm wondering to you or anyone else if what it looks like from the other side, if say someone who's engaging from the start through the path of fullness, does that open naturally into emptiness at a certain point?
It does, yes. And there's a way that walking each vector of development of these three that I mentioned eventually opens up the rest of them. And the question is whether we're walking in a straight line and then at some point there's some drag from the other ones, or we're doing more of a spiral. And in my idea of the path, and this is where a lot of the spiral metaphors come from in the book and generally in my life, is that it's much easier to do a little bit of this and then a little of this and then this and then this and just increasing more increasingly bigger spirals versus just walking a straight line.
And each of those spirals are the three kind of approaches, you mean? Like you hit kind of parts of each of the spirals, or there's other things in the spirals?
Yeah, I mean, so there are many things in the path that I like describing as spirals. Those three vectors are just a core organizing motif for the entire book and generally the way that I conceive of the path. But there are many, many different things. In classic Buddhism, there's also, as paired the Eightfold Noble Path, there's Sila, Samadhi, Panya, morality, meditation, concentration, and mindfulness, awareness. So it's how collected the mind is allows you to be more mindful, allows you to be more moral. If you're more moral, you have less regret. If you don't have regret, the mind can be more easily collected. If you're more easily collected, you have more awareness, right? And so spirals all the way. And an issue here that relates to what we've been talking about. Oh, bye, Jonathan. We are recording this, so you can catch up later if you want. Often the danger of having some ultimate idea about how things should be, including myself, including the world, is that it tends to push us in very linear ways and not have us take a step back even as we're bumping into a wall. Right? We have an idea of even of what enlightenment is, right? Many people get stuck in the jhanas, for example, because what they've been taught or how they've interpreted the suttas is just meditate a lot and be in the deepest jhana and collect the mind, and then sometimes something happens. And they're so attached to the idea, they don't see it. They don't see it as constrictive. They don't see it as in the way. In the book, I like from the very first moment planting those seeds of spiral progression, spiral to grow, one might say. So what I'd like us to do, we have another time for another question or two, and then I have an inquiry for you, one that I want to give you a little more time for. Bye, Sophia. And then even do a short session, one-on-one or a small group where we share, come back and share with everyone. So last question or two, last comment or two.
With the jhanas or concentration, maybe I'm just trying to pin it down too much, but is there a level that is necessary, like, I don't know, measurable by like which jhana or whatever that like is needed?
It's not necessary, but it's helpful. So in the same way, if you go the other directions without having at least a little bit of concentration, you'll just have to make more effort. Generally speaking, more effort
Okay,
without it. Yeah.
makes sense. Thanks.
It's sort of like you can ride a bike that's really rusty, but if you add a tiny bit of oil, you're gonna have such an easier time.
My question is about what seems sometimes like a paradox, because what we are doing now, actually, it's building another map of the maps and so on. And somehow the practice should give us the real, feeling, the real connection. So my question is how not to get all this into another map and actually to connect it to the actual practice.
Yeah. So you're putting your finger on something that's been not a struggle, but something that I've been thinking about for a long time. Originally, the book that I wrote, I thought my contribution would only be on the intellectual front. And then as I was writing, and even as it increased my understanding, and some people have read the book before it had any practice section and appreciated it, and it inspired them on the path and helped them grow. What you say is true. Without the practice, this barely helps. And I'll say, for now, it's enough just to listen. It's enough just to take on these ideas, just to wrestle with them and trust that the right seeds are planted. And then do the meditation, in some senses, if you know nothing besides the meditation instructions, and trust that those seeds sprout at the right time. The more you engage with this content and the more you practice, the more you'll start seeing these realizations come up, and in a beneficial way, both on the cushion and in daily life. As an example, just from what we said about when we talked about the shame of doing something that's not right, that helps it come into awareness the next time that we might run into shame. And we have not spoken about what to do with shame, but I'm sure many of you have tools. Briefly, I'll say, when I find myself in shame, the best thing to do is just tell someone and see that it's okay. Right? I have shame about my possibly outdated ideas about whatever. And I tell a friend or I tell someone in community, and that helps me see that it's fine. There's nothing to be ashamed of. So just having this idea in mind allows things to come into conscious awareness, and then we have choice. And it's important not to get lost, but the not getting lost is more so about the practice than anything else. Any final quick one? Okay, so here's my inquiry for you for today related to this. We sort of did this before, but I really want you to go into this right now, and not from the perspective of something is wrong, but really just from a very bare exploration about the narratives of your life, about the models of how the world is governing your existence. I want you to ask yourselves, which parts of your world model have you inherited without ever questioning? What is it that you know because someone told you? Versus you know because you've picked it up from direct experience and even cultivated with your wisdom. And I'm really inviting you to think about this from every layer of existence. And so it can be my ideology, right? Am I this religion? Am I this economic ideology? And it can even be this world is a simulation. I'm in the matrix, or humans are the height of creation and God made us in his image. Anything that comes to mind, even just like on the, what is this? Someone told me what this is. So let's all do it together in the same group. I was hoping we would have smaller groups with some more intimacy, but perhaps some of you are brave enough to say what comes up from this exploration.
Yeah,
I'm
next session we will
happy.
have groups.
I'm happy to start because I actually wanted to talk about this in the QA, but I've come to the realization that almost everything I know is told to me by somebody else. And I've thought about this a bunch lately, like even the idea of gravity. Like I know gravity exists, but like the speed of gravity, I like take a scientist's explanation for it, and I assume that they've done their homework and that's correct. So I just think about all the things that I take or that I used to take for granted because someone told me that and they're a scientist and they're believable, right? Or whatever it might be. So I really like the thing that I do is I like waffle on the like, oh my God, how close to going crazy am I? Because there's like it's a slippery slope, right? And so maybe directly to your question, I think the hardest part is that I look externally for a lot of things, and almost always it's like, um, what are things I should know that somebody else has done the homework so I don't have to do it for myself? And then when I go to the meditation cushion to try to like sit and know for myself, I'm still sometimes in this like, do I believe it to be true? How do I know it to be true? And I don't know if that answers your question directly, but I'm just so aware of how many things I believe because my parents told me, because my government told me, because Neil deGrasse Tyson says it's accurate. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of I trust this person and therefore I trust they've done their homework, but a lot of it I don't care about. Like, why would I ever want to verify it? You know, like what does the number matter? And some of the things do matter, and some of them are like, I guess, more important, but they feel time consuming. So how would you go about it? So I don't know if this is what you're looking for, Dor, but I wanted to note that I'm like so aware of how little I know to be true from my own experience and how much is told to me by others.
I want to say the issue here is not trusting that other people give us worthwhile information and models of the world. It's more so knowing where I've elected to believe such a model that someone gave me because that's the best that I can do, versus someone installed an unconscious belief that I've never looked into and have chosen. And I'll say this inquiry is important all the way down the path because ultimately we want to become our own authorities, just like we want to become our own teachers. We want to become our own authorities. And as an authority, I can both say to myself, this is what I've found out through my own direct experience. And this is what I choose to believe about the physicist telling me gravity is 9.8, right? Like it's fine. Yeah. But either way, I'm becoming my own authority. And it's a bit of a paradox that before making the greater reality the authority, we first have to become our own authority. But that really helps. So I'm not certainly not expecting or suggesting that you have to measure every physical constant. It's just about knowing that you've made the choice.
This question is a powerful question that you ask, and we talk about how our belief system is constructed. Yes, whatever ideas, and we talk about. I wish we can aware that it's a choice. But now I wonder if it's truly choice. Is that just a preference, or it's again? Let's say I say I love women. Okay, I love basketball. So is that? To what degree the emotions that creating that preference is by my free will or something even deeper? Yes, it's almost like a loop that you get into that. So I want to always question that, to try to have a kind of like a healthy skepticism in some ways, just to wonder. But ultimately, I realize that I'm not being judgmental of anyone. Try to understand and living my own life, my own path with humility. to the best that I can. Yet in the end of the day, I have to make some, choices. So it's a good exercise, and to what degree we're even capable of knowing that it's a choice or not, particular preferences. So that's kind of like interesting angle that trickle down from a particular belief about political, Republican, Democrat, up to what you like to eat even.
I really like the question, how do I know? How do I know?
I think you can only know if you try to change and gain knowledge, right? Direct experiential knowledge.
Or choosing to believe what someone told you, right? The physical constants. There are stars in the sky you can travel to with a spaceship. Sure.
There's something to come to mind to the question that you asked about how do we know? And in some ways, probably you put it that in your material. I mean, obviously we have knowledge, we have wisdom, we have the models that we create. One thing, in my opinion, and we have the experience, yes. But again, can we truly know what is the ultimate truth, or we just can know that by negation? Yes, we talked about, I know that this is not that, this is not that, this is not that, but do I know what is the knowing? What is that?
Okay, so let's try this micro exercise within the micro exercise. How do you know, and I'm asking everyone, how do you know that there is an ultimate truth?
I don't.
It's a concept, I don't know.
Yeah. And let's say you had a concept of an ultimate truth. What would you do with it?
Worship it.
Ah.
Buy lunch from it, or
It is very comforting to worship ultimate truth.
But it's also comforting to some to know that you don't know the truth. It's also a liberation on the
Yes.
opposite. And
of course, I don't know the truth is also an ultimate belief.
to me, the truth seems a bit ill-defined.
Well, so we're entering a very juicy space. If you can continue abiding in the space of non-knowing, not trying to put your finger on any final answer, remaining in this spacious nothing everythingness, I feel us all have been taken a step towards. Start getting a sense of where this path leads. And if you're not used to it, it might be uncomfortable because of all the parts of us that exist only in relation to some idea that we've considered to be an ultimate truth. But then throughout the path, we clear those out, what I like calling a foundationless psyche. No originating belief, no cornerstone of mind, no thing that is a priori true, no understanding that is the load-bearing beam of the structure of mind. You might entertain yourselves by imagining what sort of existence occurs without any such foundational idea. What is true without any idea? I'm curious if, as we're doing this, in continuation with the inquiry, someone has some idea of something come up. No, but this is true. No, but I know this for sure. Anything like this you'd like to share?
How about feeling? Like, I feel something, like I feel beloved, for example.
Hmm?
Will that be ultimate truth? Because I feel it, I'm the ultimate judge.
Tell me.
In some sense, kind of.
Yeah, continue exploring this.
Yeah.
Just like any ultimate sounding truth that comes out. The best way to go about seeing if it's really true, if it's ultimately true, is trying to continue applying it to everything and seeing where it's showing its cracks. That's engagement from this level, from level of concepts and ideas.
I think it feels true that like I have it, that there's things I'm experiencing. Like this feels like these are like they're not like, I guess I could be in the matrix, but like they feel like they're here. Like there's something here, at least, that I have direct, like, just feeling of.
That's the bringing us back to the start. This is all we know. This, just here, just now. That's all we know for sure.
Okay, so I don't have to strip that. I don't have to be like, that's that's
No,
nothing.
you don't have to.
Okay.
It is helpful.
It is helpful to strip it. Okay.
And we will get to that later.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
All right. Any final thoughts before we close the exploration of today's 2 chapters?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you mean by it? Is it a ground of, is it the sensory information? Is it the
So,
ground
even calling it sensory information is saying something. And of course, when we do speak about this path, technically, I like saying sensory information because there is a way that we see things more directly, just the senses before the layers and layers of ideas about them. But if I'm just making this gesture, or it's just like the way that Alan Watts used to say when referring to, he would do something like refer to the thing and then hit a gong and it'll be like a bam. And he would say, and we won't give it a name. So it's about tuning us to and not following up with, oh, the senses, oh, the universe, oh, God, oh, this. And when we can truly stay tuned to in every moment is when we get a little less crazy. What a wonderful notion to end this discussion on. So what I want to do now with the little time we have left is just to entice you with a preview of next week, where we talk about the piece de resistance of the book in many ways, which is the chapter Suffering and the Way Out of Suffering. And there we talk about not just how we get trapped in ideas about reality, but how this happens. What is it that prompts us to get stuck in those ideas? Right? Why is it that from the beginning we don't see everything arising into the space as a gift, but hold on to a particular way of solving the conflicts of our lives or making decisions about any phenomena that comes up? And it's quite the deep dive. I really do recommend. I know I have not asked, and I never intend to ask who's read the chapter before our discussion, but I do highly recommend that you do before the next one. And also very, very much feel free to ask questions about this in anticipation if there's something you don't understand, because I do dive a little bit deeper and deeper than probably any other chapter in the book into some ideas from neuroscience, into some ideas from statistics and information theory, and so many different things. So just feel free to ask me in personal message, or preferably in the group itself, so we can come prepared, so we can really milk all of those ideas for what they're worth. And lastly, I want to say again, this is the this is the first time we've done this, as was apparent in a few bits today. Promise you we will do better for next time. And also, I would really appreciate any feedback or any comments about the process, any meta comment. And also, not just about the structure or any place where we fucked up a little bit or it was not as smooth as it could have been, but also I'm curious for those, and especially for those of you who know you who want to come next time, or generally be in attendance. If you want more inquiry, if you want more intellectual discussion, if you want more moments like this where we sort of go into a deep experience together, even just like a taste of it. Any preferences, any ideas, any reflections, welcome them very much. You can also, again, post in the group, message me directly, and there's also the anonymous feedback form that's at the description of the main group, the Heart Illuminated Sangha.
Sorry,
Yeah.
is that a question for right now, or you'd rather us like email you or something?
If you have something burning that you can tell me and want everyone else to hear, definitely. If it's alive right now, just blurt it out.
Oh,
you know,
sure.
you can call here for a few more seconds, and I also am happy to stay here with you if you want.
Oh,
otherwise, yeah, never.
I guess, yeah, just the question about the inquiry and experience, like for me, definitely, I really liked it. So definitely more of those is my vote. And also a quick question about, are we reading, is it 2 chapters each time? I think I got it confused for this.
Oh, so I will, every week, I will say which chapters come next. These were 2 short ones. The next one is longer and a little more dense, so we'll focus on just that. Yeah.
We will make sure to post it in the groups as well, so there's no need to write it down or something.
Is there is the group already made and I was supposed to like
Yeah, it's on WhatsApp.
something?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
Among, do we have our details? Can we?
I could share the invite link directly in the chat, or if you could send me your email or any contact details, I will make sure to send it to you.
Okay.
And of course, this is relevant to anyone that is here.
All right, any last comments or feedback or anything before we close?
I'm very grateful. Thank you very much.
Oh. Amazing.
I think think this was great besides all the hiccups. And
Thank
I know
you.
we just do better. I'm excited about doing this together. All right.
Thank
See you next week. Take care.